As the hours tick away and we get closer to the New Hampshire primary, we hit the campaign trail to meet up with a couple of the candidates today, including Ron Paul, we met up with at his hotel in Bow. And obviously this is a state that fits very well for you with your ideas,
right,
what you believe in. How do you expect to do?
I expect to do very well. I know what obstacle is beating Mitt Romney since it's his home state, but I think we're going to cut into that, and I think we're going to stay well ahead of the rest of the candidates.
How will you go about implementing your policies, particularly in regards to spending reduction, and how will you convince Congress that this is what needs to be done?
Well, this is where they need awaken, and only the people can do this, and of course that's what I'm trying to do now, wake up the people, and if elected, that will send a strong message, because we have to do the cutting, and like I've said, that if Congress and people in Washington understood how serious this crisis is financially, they wouldn't be talking about increasing spending automatically and tinkering on the edges of cutting slightly the proposed increases. They would cut spending because the deficit is going to do us in. That means we have to change our role for government. We cannot be the policemen of the world, and we can't continue to have this welfare state that we can't pay for it because there's no funds.
You've talked about compromise and how you are not a guy who likes to compromise, but would you do that? Would you need to compromise in order to push forth and to make significant spending reductions, but perhaps not the ones that you've laid out?
I don't think compromise is the right word, because I think over the decades, since we were so rich and we could borrow and we also could print money, which is all coming to an end, the compromises were that you want your program, I want my program, so we'll both vote for the deficit. And that's what they're still doing. So no, that isn't a good compromise. I think it's better to work with coalitions, bring people together, because there would be some who would be more willing to cut overseas spending and some who would be more willing to cut some of the domestic spending, and we should have this coalition come together to insist on those cuts.
I spoke with your son in regards to Iran, which is a concern with voters here in New Hampshire, and he said that you would be able to keep them from achieving a nuclear weapon, but obviously would do so without bombing and so forth and sanctions. How would you do it, and what type of a priority would it be?
Well, that would be the goal. I mean, we can't say that we can absolutely control the world. But I think what's going on in the Middle East is giving them a tremendous incentive. Just like Barack, the defense minister for Israel, said that he understands perfectly why they want a weapon. If he were an Iranian, he'd want a nuclear weapon too, just as a deterrent, because they're surrounded and they're being threatened. So you want to diminish this threat to them, and that's why I think sanctions are very bad and hurts the dissidents who are trying to overthrow their government, because it unifies the people against the outsiders coming in to tell them what to do. So that would be certainly a much more conducive way of preventing them from getting a nuclear weapon, because that, of course, we don't want them to have it. But they actually did a little bit of talking with Gaddafi, and he gave up his nuclear weapon program, but look at what we did to him. I mean, then we joined the rebel and killed them, So that's not the way to do it. What we want to do is work with them, encourage them, but not to say that if you don't, even if you do what we ask you to do, we're going to support the coup and we're going to kill you for it. So that makes no sense to me.
We've heard you address Gingrich, Perry, as well as Santorum in a very personal way, particularly with your advertising, which is very effective, but not so much Governor Romney. Are you okay with Governor Romney being the nominee?
Yeah, we did an ad calling him the flip-flopper.
But not recently.
I don't know when the ads come and go, but that was early on. We talked a lot about him on flip-flopping on the issues, and I don't hesitate to say it when people ask me about him, because he's certainly been all over the map on single-payer systems, and I wouldn't be bashful about his very aggressive foreign policy. He wants to. I think he said that he'd spend more money overseas, if I'm not mistaken. So. No, I put them almost all in the same category, that they, most of them, in many ways, support the status quo. I'm trying to change the status quo.
Final thing, do you think that any of them are real fiscal conservatives on the stage, except for yourself, that would significantly address the issues of spending and debt reduction?
If you ask me to prove that one of them is a real fiscal conservative where they would cut something, I'd have to really search hard. I really doubt that they would qualify for that. Ron Paul right there polling very well here in the state of New Hampshire, and it looks like it's going to be a battle for second place between Paul and Jon Huntsman, who we caught up with at a house party in Bedford.
We've seen you out on the trail. You continue to gain steam here in the state of New Hampshire, and I see the momentum. It looks like you're headed to a strong finish.
Thanks, Chris. I'm honored by your endorsement, by the way. That means a great deal. There's real momentum out there. There is energy. I can feel it on the ground everywhere I go. I don't know what it means from a quantitative standpoint in terms of the final finish, but I know we're going to do well. I just feel it out there. And I'd rather be on the upswing the last couple of days than on the downswing, as I'm sure others are. And all we have to do is keep it up, work hard, shake every hand we can find, and ask people for their vote, knowing full well that we're asking for their trust, which is a big deal when people put trust in you.
One of the things I've noticed about you is you have a tremendous backbone, but also the temperament that I feel will really relate well to dealing with Washington, D.C. And you'll have, obviously, the things that you want to do, but the ability to work with others. What are some of the examples you could pass along to voters about your bipartisan record and your ability to work with others and some of the top things that you look at doing in D.C. once you're elected?
Well, I believe we have an economic deficit that we have to address, and that's going to call for tax reform, first and foremost. I've got a bipartisan plan I've already put on the table. It's bold, it is far-reaching, and it's totally doable. And I want to get regulatory measures done, and I want to take steps toward energy independence. But I also have a reform side that I think is critical if we want to address the trust deficit, and that's term limits for Congress. That's closing the revolving door. On Wall Street, that is sitting down with the banks and right-sizing them. There's no other way to do it. We're setting ourselves up for another bailout, which we should not as a people have to endure. We've been there, we have done that, and we're just not going to do it again. But if we don't right-size the banks, that's exactly what we're headed for. And I say we're too good as people to allow that to happen again.
Governor Romney criticized your service to the Obama administration during the debate on Saturday night. I thought that was laughable, particularly in an open primary where a lot of individuals, independents, moderates, are looking for an individual who will work with others. And particularly here in the state of New Hampshire, I think that is a strong attribute. What did you think of that? And were you taken back during the debate? And you obviously responded during Sunday's debate.
I think he's totally out of touch with reality. People want to be brought together. People want to unify as Americans, but that takes leadership. Not someone who's going to stand up there with the same old tired sound bites that he's learned from, the cast of advisors and consultants, but someone who's going to speak from their heart and say, we're coming together as America. We're all going to have to put forward a shared sacrifice. There's no other way around it, but we're going to move into the 21st century better and stronger and more united before. That's where we want to go. And I tried to do that as governor. We pulled together as a state, I think, in a most unprecedented way. I got about 80% of the vote for my re-election. I got Republicans and independents and even a whole lot of Democrats, not because I'm a great politician, I'm not, but because our people wanted leadership and they wanted a way forward, and we offered that. And we're offering the same thing to the people of America.
Final thing, this is a state that prides itself very much on fiscal conservatism, and you look at your record in Utah and you see a flat tax. You also see what you do with health care without a mandate, and dealing with health care in a real way, harmonizing medical records was one of the things that really impressed me about your record in Utah. Do you feel that these are things that are resonating with the people of New Hampshire about your message?
The more they look into my record, which I encourage them to do, let's face it, they've got to know your name, a little bit about your bio, and then they start digging into your record. And I think that's where a lot of people in the state are right now, and maybe even tonight, maybe in the morning. And that's good news for us, because they're going to find a very complete, thorough, comprehensive, positive, pro-growth, reform-minded, conservative record. And I'm proud of that. We're running on my record, not running from my record. They're not going to find a lot of political shenanigans and a lot of political theater. I don't do that. I find solutions to problems in a pragmatic and conservative way, and I get out there and I work to get them done.
Governor Huntsman, I think you're headed to a strong finish here in New Hampshire, and best of luck on Tuesday.
Thanks, Chris. It's a great honor to be with you. Thanks again for the endorsement.
We'll be back with more after this.